The 2021 NFL Draft featured a stacked class of quarterbacks, including generational prospect Trevor Lawrence. But the 49ers in March of 2021 made a blockbuster trade with the Miami Dolphins to move up to the number 3 overall pick, and they selected Trey Lance. We are now more than 2 years removed from that trade, and there are current speculations on if Trey Lance is the biggest draft bust of all time. In this video, we're going to look at the original trade in 2021 and look at what the Niners lost out on, what the Dolphins gained from it, as well as does Trey Lance have hope, a future, or will he go down as one of the biggest draft busts of all time? Let's go back in time to March 26, 2021, when a blockbuster trade occurs. The 49ers give up a 2021 first-round pick, a 2022 first-round pick, a 2023 first-round pick, and a 2022 third-round pick to move up to this number 3 overall selection from the number 12 pick in that draft. There was lots of speculation on what quarterback they were going to be taking. A lot of people thought it was Mac Jones. Justin Fields could have been in the mix, but they went with North Dakota State product Trey Lance. Now, we can immediately fill in 2 picks of what that trade looked like. As we now know, Lance was selected by the 49ers, as well as Channing Tindall was the selection from the Miami Dolphins. Now, at the moment, Tindall is just kind of a bonus in this grand scheme of trades. He's only had 1 year, and he made a few tackles, but he could end up developing to something which could make this trade worse. But for now, he's just kind of a throw-in. But let's look at what happened to the rest of these picks. The Miami Dolphins, with the 12th overall pick, ended up using that pick to trade up and select Jalen Waddle, a wide receiver from Alabama, who now has become one of the best receivers in the league. And not only did they snag that receiver, they used the 2022 first round to get Tyreek Hill. They now have potentially one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver duo in the NFL. So once again, that was not straight up value that they didn't get those specifically from this trade, but these 2 picks were the number 1 piece in both of those trades to make that happen. Their 2023 first round pick was used to get Bradley Chubb, another star player on the defensive side of the ball. They got him from the Denver Broncos. And once again, it wasn't a straight up trade, but those pieces heavily impacted what happened there. And let's also look at it from a pure value standpoint. If you just want to look up what those picks were worth. The 2021 first ended up being Micah Parsons with the 12th overall pick. If you go on Pro Football Reference, and I do quite a bit, if you look at their approximate value for players, that number is astronomically different. Micah Parsons alone has been worth 37 so far in his career, and Trey Lance has been worth 4 of a number if you put a value to each player. The 29th pick in the 2022 draft ended up being Cole Strange, a small school product who went to the New England Patriots, who in his rookie season gained 7 approximate value points. That's almost double what Trey Lance had in 2 years. And we don't know yet what's going to happen for Brian Brzee, a defensive lineman from Clemson who went to the Saints this year. We don't know what's going to happen there. But on paper, wow, that is a lot lost, which is why I think people are speculating if it is the biggest draft bust of all time, because even with some other historic busts, they didn't trade for the player. Here, San Francisco lost out on huge value, and Miami Dolphins gave they have top 2 receivers on the outside, as well as a defensive star player with these picks that now have put them back in that playoff contention role. Now let's talk about how we got to this situation. So the 49ers pick Lance in 2021, and at the time they still had Jimmy Garoppolo. And Jimmy Garoppolo he was still very successful on the 49ers. So Lance ended up getting 2 starts his rookie season, but then did not get the full starting job at any point that year. But the following year, last year, in 2022, is when he was named the starter going into the season. There was hope there that he was going to be the future of the franchise. But then tragedy struck very early on in the season, As in his second start of that season, he ends up with an injury that takes him out the entire rest of the year. So back comes Jimmy Garoppolo, but he ends up getting hurt, and Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant of last season, ends up going into the starting position and leads the Niners to the NFC Championship. And now what was very interesting is when you get to the NFC Championship, he gets injured, and they have to throw in Josh Johnson to play. I think this could be significant when we talk about this later, but that game caused a rule that will maybe impact whether he's still on this team. But basically, it was clear after that point, and they let Jimmy Garoppolo go, and he's now with the Raiders, that the Niners believe in Brock Purdy, but there was now the injury concern. So you have Lance versus Purdy. But then they bring in Sam Darnold, and that obviously threw in, maybe they had some concern for Trey Lance still. And now that we are in August, very close to the season, Sam Darnold was named the backup. And Purdy, it might be ready for week 1. So he's obviously the QB1. Lance slides in there at QB3, and now it's like they're questioning if we're at this point holding him on as a QB3 and might end up eventually letting him go. Is it worth trading him? Because what's interesting is, of course, the NFC Championship from last season caused a new rule because of the 49ers where you can have a third quarterback on your game day roster that doesn't count towards that 46. But I think that you have to be clear, it does count towards your 53, but not towards your active 46. So I think that it's going to be more beneficial for teams with the guy in the practice squad. Trey Lance is not going to land on the practice squad. He will get claimed by somebody if they cut him. So that's why they're going to start looking at trades. Let's talk about why Trey Lance is the third quarterback. Why is he not the starter? What has gone wrong? And why are they potentially looking to move on from him? And after revisiting a little bit of what I watched yesterday he has obviously a very limited amount of tape, and he did in college as well, which is very mysterious. That's what's made this whole kind of process very interesting. Even seeing some of the preseason games, I think that reminds me of his fellow classmate, Zach Wilson, who when I watched him against the Jaguars last year, what I saw was the high-end throws and flashes are still there for those guys, but the weaknesses that we thought were maybe minor or just slight weaknesses in the draft have been exponentially caused into a train wreck for those players. And so talking specifically with Lance, I actually think that if we go back to my 2021 evaluation, which you can watch the video here, I think I sound a little bit different there too, but if you want a flashback, go ahead and look at that. I actually think what I wrote was partly correct. Now, I did still have a first-round grade on him, but I had a mid-first round. At the time, I didn't love the pick. I would have gave it about a B-. I like the positional value, but I would have picked Justin Fields in that situation. I would have still picked Lance over Mac Jones just because of the upside, but I specifically put in there he needs to sit. And so they were smart. They didn't start him right away. But I think there's one sentence in there that sticks out on what I've seen the biggest issue is with him, and it's hesitation. He right now does not have the confidence to take the ball and see the open guy and just let it go. Even on some of the plays that his guys caught the ball, ran a large distance, he's finding them late. I think that his mobility is still there, has a huge impact. His arm strength, still very talented. His highlight plays are some of the best you'll see, but the thing is consistency. I don't know if he has that right now. And it reminds me of, I just watched recently a video from Pat McAfee on Marcus Mariota in the preseason last week, where they were talking about, has he lost that dog in him? That confidence, the it factor. And that's what I think I've seen here. And I'm going to say this. From a pure talent perspective and what I see on tape, does he have the skills where a team should take him and try to salvage him? Yes, he still has plenty of talent. I would say he's fixable, except the thing that needs to be fixed for him is nothing a coach can really do. It is, in the end, the confidence, that dog in him. And the thing with that problem is players are different. People in the world are different. You have that confidence or you don't. And now Robert Saleh on Hard Knocks is talking about it a little bit too. You make that decision. Now, can a non-confident person turn into a confident person? I believe absolutely. But you're going to have an initial way of which one you are. And in the end, the only person that can change that, you can get motivation, but the only person that can change that is yourself. So the problem is I don't give up on Lance the prospect, but for him to get back to maybe what he was, but to me he's never been there, but to get to where he should be, he has to mentally kind of move past this. And it reminds me of Zach Wilson where, yeah, your team gives you 4 games. There's obviously not much to work with there yourself. It's like Deshaun Kaiser back in the day too. It's like you have nothing to work with. It's hard to bounce back from that. It's a huge obstacle. I don't know how easy it is to do that. But basically my bottom line is I do think he should still be in the league. I think that he's not quite ready yet. But the hard thing is to get him ready, you kind of need to give him snaps. And now that this year's preseason's almost over, I don't even know if he's going to play for the Niners this week because he's sitting out practice and stuff too. I don't know where he's going to get these reps, but the player is still there. It's just he needs to mentally get back in the game. Now, let's end this video on where do I think he could go. Do I think that there's a destination that makes any sense? I don't think there's a glaring destination, but I'm going to give some options out there. I have 5 that I think are realistic, and I'll throw out 2 other random ones, but I think that these are the 5 that I would be looking at. This is, of course, if he's traded. I think that if they don't get a trade package, I do think they'll keep him on the roster. As said, if they cut him, somebody else will claim him. I don't think they'll cut him, but if they did, I'd throw in a couple other names. But if it were pure trade, I'd say the number 1 spot for me would be Atlanta, as I'm not a huge Ridder fan myself. Not a huge fan of Desmond Ridder. I think that he's meant to be a Taylor Heineke level, which is now in Atlanta too, but a kind of high-end backup. I do think Ridder could be somewhere in that like 28 to 32 range as a starter, but I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. So Atlanta, if they wanted to, with kind of the mobile offense they could run, you could get something to go there. My other one is Miami. And that's with the Mike McDaniel connection, but it's not like really they had a ton of time together. I'll tell you the reason I have him on the list is because I was actually concerned with, in the preseason when I watched the game, Skylar Thompson went in before Mike White, and I didn't expect that. If you have Skylar Thompson, who was a late round pick last year, I think that they wouldn't mind getting the upgrade. Now, the problem is, if Tua goes down, which he's had happened before, maybe I hope he stays healthy this season, Lance is not ready to go in right away. So that's why I don't know if that makes sense. But I think if there's any team that has a connection that would make any sense to grab him, it'd be Miami. After that, a couple teams that could throw a dartboard. Denver and Minnesota are 2 teams that they have like a veteran quarterback who slowly, if they don't do well, could be on the way out, that they could just pick up a young upside player. Like Denver, to me, they have Jarrett Stidham. That's not a high upside future guy if Russ doesn't turn out this year. Minnesota, Kirk Cousins nearing the end of his contract. Jaron Hall, don't know what it's going to be. Nick Mullins, a proven veteran. That could work. But obviously it's always going to be the trade capital that you have to give up. I'm going to throw in Buffalo there too. I don't love their situation behind Josh Allen, but it would be the same thing where they'd probably keep Kyle Allen and then they'd keep Lance as a third, just kind of upside. It would remind me of when Trubisky went to the Bills for a year and then he went as a starter to the Steelers the next year. I think that the other 2 teams I would throw out there if he gets cut, I initially thought the Raiders, because there's a potential opening there, but with Garoppolo, that could be interesting. And I think they like Aiden O'Connell. The one other team I throw out, and it's changed since yesterday, they traded for Josh Dobbs, would be the Arizona Cardinals. Because Kyler's health is a huge concern. But they also they picked a Clayton Tune in the middle rounds. They just traded for Josh Dobbs. I think it's a little too crowded. So I don't know what the best place is, and I honestly don't think the Niners are going to get as good of a compensation that they want. So it reminds me of the Jonathan Taylor situation where I think that Lance is just going to stay here, and it's really unfortunate. Odds are there's a chance he just ends up being in San Francisco and kind of winds down his career. I hope that does not happen because, as said, the talent and the player still there. He just needs to get the mentally kind of confidence back, in my opinion. That's all that's missing. So with that being said, that's what I think will happen to Trey Lance. I think that he needs to find a new home, but the question is going to be where. Looking back at that trade, obviously right now it doesn't look good, but there maybe is hope. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.